Hi there, and welcome back to Going Blind with me, Early Riser. This is the first episode that we're actually going to start working on a project. Getting ready to do a portrait for Sally Long Dog, or Mayor Sally Long Dog, New York City's first dog mayor. Not the mayor's dog, this is a separately elected position. And Sally is coming to the end of her term. And so the first thing I do when I start a painting or a project is decide, what am I going to put this on? There's so many different options. And one of the reasons why I love being a mixed media artist is that I basically have the world as the options. I can do it on canvas, of course, paper. I can do it on wood panels. I can paint on street signs, which I've done many times in the past. In fact, hold on one second. I'll be right back. Yeah, like this, for instance. This is kind of spooky too. Luke, I am your father. Wait. Luke, I am your father. I sound more like Arnold Schwarzenegger. We are here to pump you up. Anyway, you can really set the tone for the whole piece. And thinking about like low vision, you know, I'm just laying here and feeling the difference between these two substrates. The cold metal. It's cold and it has like a little. I don't know if you guys can hear that. This like pretty texture. Obviously it's industrial feeling. It's tough. You know, it wants to be out on the street where it can go yell at somebody.
Come, you heard what the boss said. Let me have it.
Okay, but
That's better.
Stop doing that or I'll give you a ticket. I have the wood here. This is birch plywood. Oh. Feels like you could curl up underneath it and read a book. Aww. So a lot of the enjoyment of art and the expression of it, to me, comes from this aspect. And obviously this is just picking out something to paint on. It's not rocket science, but it's a meaningful part of the process for me. So anyway, here we are, and I'm selecting what I'm going to use for this particular portrait. And obviously the first thing I think about is size. It has to hang in a certain space, and I usually would paint on canvas, but for this I wanted it to be special. I wanted durability, so putting it on a wood panel is really the classic way to go, and so I couldn't resist. So here we have our beautiful 24 by, I'll put that below. It's a 24 by something. Ordinarily I make these myself, but I actually had this lovely one already here, thanks to my good friend and incredible talented artist, Bree Chapin. So you should check out her work. And I definitely know that this is Bree's because the back is completely covered with glitter. But now it's mine, and it's going to forevermore be the base for our portrait of Sally Long Dog, the mayor dog or dog mayor of New York City. Well, this is not tool time, but I like these sponges a lot. So maybe I'll talk about the sponges in the future. Gesso time. So, since I don't want to assume anybody knows anything, gesso is basically a primer or a base coat. These days it is made of acrylic. It does stick more than the acrylic paint. Traditionally, it was made with gypsum and some other stuff, and has been called things like ground. Ground would be like a thicker version that you would apply with a spatula or a squeegee, or gesso, which is a thinner version, but both really serve the same role. And basically, both are simply primers. So all of them could be used interchangeably today. Most artists still say gesso, just out of tradition, frankly.
Tradition!
If you were to say, I primed my canvas, I don't think anybody would look at you too weird. I guess it could be a little bit of a snobby thing for some, people, like, oh boy, But I think that the tub says gesso, it doesn't say primer, but anyway. It's not really true gesso, because true gesso has, like I said, gypsum in it, and I don't even know what else it was made of, but it's not this stuff. So I like to work with very thin gesso because I like to get it very, very, very smooth. And on board, you see every little imperfection. So I thin it way down, and I start with thin gesso to begin with, but then I let it down even more. Letting down is a term that we use to describe, look at this. Can you believe? Anyway, letting down is a term that we use, or let down is a term that we use to describe adding water. Acrylic paints can be let down by adding water to them, essentially thinning them out. Other ways to thin out paints, you can also thin out paints with different types of mediums, basically the vehicle of the paint minus pigment. The upside to that is that you keep the adhesive gel consistency. The downside of it is that it stays the same thickness. If you want it to be thinner or more drippy, for lack of a better term, then you have to add water. However, the more water you add, the more anything you add, the less pigment. So I'm going to work to get this as smooth as possible, and watching very closely for when it starts to tack up. As soon as I'm seeing any sign that it's tacking up, I'm going to stop. I put many coats of gesso, at least 3. Whoa, gloppy. I like to try to get this cleaned up before we set it aside. As long as this isn't too dry, you can get it back into the tub and it's fine to reuse. Okay, now that we've got that all cleaned up, we'll set it aside to dry, and let's switch gears here and talk a little bit about visual impairment, specifically macular degeneration. Welcome back, class. Teacher Early Riser here to talk to you today about macular degeneration. I think what I'd like to do is break away from the art halfway through each show to highlight a different type of visual impairment each episode. And we're going to start with macular degeneration because that's what I have. I want to talk a little bit about what it is and also things to look out for. But we'll keep it simple, straightforward, and then if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for future topics, I would love those as well, or ways that I can address these things in the future also. So macular degeneration is a broad term that describes many different disorders, but they generally have these same aspects to them. In order to understand what macular degeneration is, you have to know what the macula is. So if you imagine the way your eye works, it works more or less like a projection screen does. If you imagine a movie, the projector projects onto the screen and then the screen shows the image. The eye works the exact same way. Light comes in, so this is light coming in, and it goes into the eye, and it has to project onto a screen. That screen is in your eye, and it's called the retina. So imagine that in your eye, all the light that is coming in is then projected onto a screen, if you will, and that screen is the retina. So makes sense, right? The light comes in, it goes through the lens, sort of like a camera would, and it's projected onto the retina. Only it's much smaller than than a movie screen would be. The most sensitive part of the retina is the macula. One of the cool tricks that our eyes do is because there's so much information coming in all at once, it really would take a lot of bandwidth to sort of focus on all of that at once. And so what our eye actually does is focus on the most important part, and then the rest is sort of It really doesn't. It takes in information, but it doesn't take in a lot of information on it. And then the brain adds that in later. And that's sort of right in the center. So after the light comes in, it projects back onto the retina, and the retina is made up of all these light-sensitive cells, like the sensor in the back of a camera or like film. And these cells will pick up that light and then transmit it off to the brain, and the brain will interpret it. The most sensitive part of the retina, as we mentioned, is the macula, and it's right in the center of your vision. So when you're looking at an area that you want to read, for instance, that part that you're really focused on, that one word, your macula is interpreting and looking at that. The rest of the areas that are in your peripheral are projecting onto the other parts of the retina. There's many, many layers sandwiched here together, and behind all of it is the blood vessels that supply the necessary nutrients to this area. Macular degeneration in its dry form is a situation where the byproducts of this, the cells are living, of course, and they produce byproducts, start to build up in between these layers, and they form, instead of being carried away by the blood vessels as they should be, they start to form kind of a lump. And so the macula is no longer smooth. And what this does, you could imagine if you had like a lump on a projection screen, everything would potentially get a little distorted. Now, usually this isn't too serious, and people that have this, it does need to be watched closely because it can progress. But generally speaking, this does not usually progress to blindness, but it can continue to develop more and more plaques. These plaques are called drusen. So I hope this is making sense, and you get these kind of plaques that build up behind, and it kind of pushes out the projection screen. I think that makes sense to people, I think. So this can progress on to a form called wet macular degeneration, where these buildup of sort of toxic byproducts, these drusen, imagine there are many of them that have built up, start to recruit blood vessels of their own, which is a no-no. They're not supposed to do that. And when they recruit blood vessels, this is a danger zone. This is sort of the progression to the next step, which is wet macular degeneration. What happens in wet macular degeneration is that these tend to sort of ooze fluid and blood, essentially. And now there's fluid in this space between the cells, not just these dry byproducts. And that fluid will really distort the vision. No longer is it just a little ripple, but big black spots will appear. So because, again, this is the central vision we're talking about, the way your vision will become affected, if you're looking at a person, for instance, if you're looking at a person, instead of seeing their features in the middle, you'll see just a big black or a big gray blotch there, right where their face should be. And this is also really terrible for reading because, of course, everywhere you look to see a word, you can't look around it because it's right in the center of your vision. I now have the wet form of this macular degeneration. It's fortunately only started in my left eye. I have these drusen, these byproduct developing in both eyes, and I've had that for many, many years. But the wet form has started in the left eye. The thing to know about if you have any family history of macular degeneration is to watch for any of the signs of any of this with something that's called an Amsler grid. You can get this from your eye doctor. You can also download and print them online. It's just a simple grid, like a graph paper with a point in the middle. And you cover one eye and you hold it at about arm's length and you look at it every single day. If you start to see that there's a black area or ripples developing, then you need to tell your eye doctor immediately and they'll do further tests. If there's any sign of macular degeneration, of course, they will advise you from there. For me, I actually go in for treatments where once a month I go and get an injection into my eye. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt. It sounds gruesome, but it doesn't hurt. And they inject a medication that actually it inhibits the growth of those blood vessels. So what can you do about this? If you have a family history of macular degeneration, you should let your eye doctor know about this. You should also download an Amsler grid and look at it once a day just to make sure there aren't any changes. Not smoking is very important. Smoking is bad for you in many ways, and smoking also contributes to the development of macular degeneration. Eating a diet high in fish will also help. You can also take fish oil supplements. Getting plenty of exercise is another important thing. And then finally, there are those AREDS supplements, which your doctor may recommend, but you should speak to your doctor first, of course, before taking anything. Anyway, that's it about macular degeneration. I've done my best just to summarize and kind of make it clear for people. Macular degeneration is one of the leading causes of blindness in the United States. There are treatments that can delay it, and knowing in advance what to do, the signs to look for, can make all the difference in the world. So I hope this has been helpful, and you know the signs to look out for now and understand a little bit about it. I hope my drawings were okay, and maybe I'll put some other things up there. I'll put a few additional sources in the description so you can check them out. An excellent source is the American College of Ophthalmology, and I'll link that as well. And back to the art. Okay, while the gesso is drying, let's get started planning this out. I always print out a copy of the photo that we're going to use as a reference, and here's the one that Cassandra and Sally selected last week. So I've printed that out nice and large, and we'll stick it right here. I like to draw out just the outline-y kind of rough idea of what I'm going to work on, and then I take a picture of it and then I project it onto the canvas, and that's how I work. And I'm going to show you how I do it. And this is especially helpful with my eyesight, where I work big and then I never really have to go small. Typically the way I like to sketch is with circles. Big circles, little circles, lots of circles, where I need stuff to be. And that kind of just helps me to plot stuff out pretty well. I guess this would be like the other ear. And then kind of connect them together. So this would be like, she has like a, comes up, back down again. Maybe this could be more like this. And then that line just kind of leads right to her eye. And then the eye. And big shadow. And then the nose. I guess kind of like this is the nose really. That's why it looks big. This is the nose. Then there's like a hump, kinda. Yeah. A hump. And that comes down a little. And then this is another hump, and then her, I guess her, more or less, I think. Where's her other ear? Okay, I see it. Kind of like this. And then come down, have like a little edge. I'm never afraid to just draw what I'm seeing, and I'll try to sort it out later. So it can look kind of messy and sort of a little all over the place in this stage, and that's okay, because I'm going to prune it down to something much more manageable later. And also because it's all one color right now, I think it makes it a little harder, but I'm just putting down the basic building blocks. I guess it's kind of like if you were going to build something with Lego, you might, and you knew kind of like you were going to make a little car or something, you would go through all the blocks that you had and pull out the ones that you figured you would need, like, you know, you would pull out like 4 sets of wheels and that kind of thing. And then you would just have like a big pile of stuff in the beginning. And so it wouldn't look like much, but you kind of, you know that you would eventually get there. And then this. This is the edge of her bow tie, and that's her ear. This is her chibby chops.
This is not your room.
It was so great to have a chance to talk with Sally the other day and her mom as well. Sally had a lot to say. I couldn't understand everything, but what I did understand was fascinating. Mostly she had a lot to say about food and treats. Understandable. Food and treats, very important, you know. There's her nose, which I think is in the right place, looks pretty good. Her ears and her eyes look good. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So we do need to, I actually do like these two colors together because we need to figure out what colors we're going to use. And this is part of the, selection process, in fact. What colors we'll use for the final piece. Well, I'll probably paint the flat colors and then go over it with outlines. This is just all outline, but just giving me rough ideas. And this area in here is especially dark. It's the same color. Just fill that in. Let me see if I can get this a little bit better. And there's like this fold here. It kind of goes Same thing on this side. This is another particularly dark area next to her eye. And up here, blocking out those very dark areas now. Really all around her eye is pretty dark. Again, there's no wrong answers at this stage. I just lay down what I'm seeing, and if it turns out to be wrong, I can fix it, or I can just kind of go with it. I really try to stay in very loose, no judgment-y area here. I find that works the best for me. Otherwise, I tense up and then I freeze, and I don't do good work. Step back. Okay. I think this is pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is take a picture of it, and then, okay, I think this is pretty good. So now I'm going to take a picture of it, and then that way I can project it onto the canvas later, and then we'll outline it that way, and that's how we'll work on our painting.